I'm Andrew Kirsch, and for a little under 10 years, I was an intelligence officer with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. And I wanted to follow up a post that I put up last week on the Emergencies Act and the inquiry that's currently going on. I commented, I wondered, is anyone listening to CSIS? Because in testimony we heard last week, the director said that in their determination that the convoy did not reach the threshold to be considered a threat to national security under the CSIS Act. And well, today or yesterday on Monday, we had new testimony from the director of CSIS, and he said that yes, CSIS did not feel that the convoy met the threshold of threats to national security under the Act, but under some advice he was provided as to the definition of the Emergencies Act threats, that the Emergencies Act was required. So you have these conflicting statements. The director said that, yes, the CSIS's assessment was that the convoy did not meet the threshold of threat to national security under the CSIS Act. However, he provided the advice that the Emergencies Act was required after being advised by the Justice Department on a broader interpretation of threats to national security, which just, set up a lot of questions in my mind. I am not a lawyer, and clearly this is going to come down to legal opinion that really there are people far more well-versed than me to comment on. But let me just tell you how this works from a practical perspective with regards to CSIS. So I was an investigator, and we would have a subject of interest that we wanted to investigate. And the first test was, do they meet the threshold to be investigated under the CSIS Act? And if that person met the threshold, then we would have certain powers. And if we wanted more intrusive powers, we would have to make the case that they were required. So for example, if I wanted to read someone's emails or have access to private conversations, I would have to apply to a judge for a warrant to get access to that otherwise privileged information. So it wasn't enough just to meet the threshold of a threat. It was, they're a threat, and I need more powers, and I need more investigative tools. And honestly, I thought that's what we were going to be discussing here in the inquiry, which is, yes, this was a national security threat, and we needed the Emergencies Act to deal with it. But it's taken a bit of a turn. So instead, we're hearing that this was not a national security threat, as we understood them to mean, but we needed this tool. And yeah, I'm not a lawyer, and I didn't know that that was going to be an interpretation of it. It seems to me that when we want to use our most intrusive investigative powers, we should be narrowing, not broadening our interpretation of what that threat is. And that's where I think it's a really interesting inquiry, and will be a very interesting outcome or result. So I will leave that to the lawyers because I think it is in their hands at this point. CSIS said it was not a threat under their act. We have broadening of the act, as was said by the National Security Advisor, Jody Thomas, and by the CSIS director. And if I could say one more thing, and I'm not there anymore, and I don't want to speak out of turn or play inside baseball, but the organization created a threat assessment that said this was not to be found as a threat under the CSIS Act, presented that to the director, who then presented it to powers that be. But when asked himself, he said that he felt that the Emergencies Act was required. I wonder how that goes down at CSIS. I don't know. I have no inside information about it, but I wonder how that is felt in the organization because of how that looks on the organization. So that's all for now. Comment, like, subscribe. I'm planning on another video later this week on foreign interference. CSIS in the news a lot lately. So like, subscribe, stay tuned, and we'll speak soon. Stay safe.